poor girl married a beggar, unaware that he was a millionaire, and what he did left everyone surprised. The church remained silent, except for the faint creak of wooden pews as uneasy guests shifted in their seats. All eyes were fixed on the altar, not on the priest, nor even on the bride, but on the man standing opposite her. His clothes were torn and faded, his boots scuffed, his dreadlocked hair loosely tied back, and his face marked with the wear of time. He appeared as a man who had slept rough for months, maybe years. The audience whispered behind their hands. Some couldn't hide their frowns, while others simply stared in stunned silence. Yet, the bride, a young woman dressed in a flowing white lace gown, looked at him with calm determination. Her name was Lillian. She was known locally for her kindness, but also her poverty. Raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. She worked at a nearby diner and lived in a rented room behind a laundromat. Life hadn't been easy, but Lillian always smiled and gave more than she ever asked for. The man standing before her was known only as Elijah. No one knew where he had come from. His first appearance was sleeping behind the train station, asking for odd jobs around the marketplace. His presence was mostly ignored, except by Lillian. 2 months ago, she noticed him sitting outside the diner in the cold after her shift, with a leftover sandwich in her bag. On instinct, she offered it to him. To her surprise, Elijah hadn't taken it immediately. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low and respectful. That night, they spoke for hours. She shared her dreams of opening a small flower shop someday. He listened attentively, as if every word mattered. Over the following weeks, Elijah kept showing up, sometimes helping carry crates at the diner, sometimes sweeping the alley behind the building. Always quiet, always respectful. Every evening, they talked. He never flirted, never asked for money, and never crossed any lines. When he finally asked, "Would you marry someone like me?" she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "because I've never met anyone who treated me like you have." She thought he was a beggar and still said yes. That was what Elijah had been searching for. Someone who saw his heart, not his name or his wealth. Elijah wasn't truly poor. Elijah Ford had once been the son of a billionaire, until he gave it all up after a bitter inheritance dispute, betrayal by a close friend, and the sudden death of his mother. He had walked away from his family's corporate empire, donating most of his wealth anonymously, and disappearing from the world for 2 years. He traveled from city to city, living as a drifter, not because he had to, but because he wanted to find something money couldn't buy. Genuine love, a woman who could see his soul without knowing his name or net worth. Now, standing in front of the altar facing Lillian, the only person who had looked at him and not away. He was about to marry her. But she knew none of this. She believed she was marrying a man with nothing. And as the priest asked them to join hands, Elijah saw tears in her eyes, not from fear or doubt, but from something deeper, love, courage. The guests sat frozen. Some looked horrified. Her distant cousins refused to stand. Her former boss shook his head in disbelief. Yet, Lillian never looked at them, only at Elijah. As the priest opened the book to begin the vows, the moment she spoke her final, "I do," a hush fell over the church. The priest closed his book gently. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," he said. A few guests hesitated, clapped hesitantly, but most remained seated, lips pressed tight, eyes narrowed. They couldn't believe she'd married a man who looked like he'd wandered in off the street. But Lillian didn't care. She turned to Elijah with a trembling smile, and he looked back at her as if she were the first sunrise he'd seen in years. Then, unexpectedly, Elijah leaned close and whispered, "There's something I need to tell you." She blinked, confused. He nodded toward the chapel doors. "Come with me." Still in her white gown, holding her bouquet, Lillian followed Elijah out of the church. As the heavy doors swung open, a sleek black car pulled up to the steps, a custom BMW with chrome rims. A man in a suit stepped out and approached Elijah. "Mr. Ford," he said with a bow, "your father's estate has been fully transferred to your name. Everything is ready." Lillian stopped walking. "Mr. Ford?" The man turned to her and smiled politely. "And you must be Mrs. Ford. Welcome." She stared at Elijah. I don't understand. Who is that? What estate?" Elijah gently took her hand. Lillian, I haven't been honest with you. My name is Elijah Ford. I was born into one of the wealthiest families in the country. But after my mother died, I left it all behind. I needed to know if anyone could love me. Not for money, not for my name, just for me. Her breath hitched, and her bouquet nearly slipped from her fingers. You're rich, she said faintly. You're not poor. I was poor by choice, he said softly. To find you. She staggered back, stunned. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might echo across the street. You lied to me. I never lied, he replied. I just didn't tell you everything. I wanted to be sure. He reached into his coat and pulled out a simple envelope. Inside was a deed to the flower shop she'd always dreamed of. He whispered to her. She took the paper with trembling hands. It had her name already printed, full ownership of a small storefront downtown, bought and waiting. Her knees buckled, and she sat on the church steps, tears flowing freely. Elijah knelt beside her. I know it's a lot, he said, but you taught me that true wealth isn't in what you own. It's in who you walk beside. I was prepared to marry you with nothing, but you gave me everything before I even told you the truth. Behind them, the crowd from the church began to spill out. People who had judged him minutes ago now stood with open mouths, eyes wide, seeing the luxury car, the suits, the entourage. The whispers shifted from pity to awe. But Elijah didn't care. He only watched Lillian. She looked at him for a long moment, then finally exhaled. You could have told me sooner, she said. I know, he replied, but I didn't want to take the risk until I was sure you were the one. She chuckled through her tears, lightly smacking his arm. That's the dumbest, sweetest thing anyone's ever done. He smiled. You still want this? He asked, holding up his hand, not with wealth or power, but simply as a man. She took it. As she stood up, the crowd began clapping, real applause this time. Even her former boss gasped and fumbled for words. Distant cousins who refused to smile earlier now approached. Wide-eyed, she walked past them all, hand in hand with the man she'd chosen long before knowing what he was truly capable of. Later that evening, Elijah took her to the flower shop. Inside, fresh arrangements waited, keys on the counter, and a sign that read, Lillian's Garden, where love grows. She cried again, not for the money, but because, for the first time in her life, someone had truly seen her worth, not what she owned, nor who she knew, just her. And as they stood beneath the warm lights of their new beginning, surrounded by flowers and hope, Lillian finally whispered, I would have loved you even if you'd never had $1. Elijah replied, that's why you're my everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.